Hello and welcome to Berlin's 96 localities. I am today in Friedrichshain in front of the Ostbahnhof, so pretty much in the west of this locality. And before we really start this tour, I would like to give you the opportunity to take a look at the map for some orientation. And in the meantime, I will get and grab me a coffee. See you in a minute.
Friedrichshain belongs to the district of Friedrichshain-Kreuzberg. 130,000 people live on an area of almost 10 square kilometers. It is worth mentioning that Kreuzberg and Friedrichshain compose the only district of Berlin that consists of only two localities, one from the former east and one from the former west, by the way. Friedrichshain is located almost entirely inside the S-Bahn ring, with the ring forming part of the locality's borders. The southern border is the Spree, which until 1989 was part of the Todesstreifen, the death zone. Besides the Ringbahn, other notable transport lines are the Stadtbahn and the underground line U5. The neighborhoods or Kieze of Friedrichshain are very different. You have a peninsula with high standard living in the very southeast with the Stralau, for example. You have old boroughs from around 1900, as well as newer ones that were built during the GDR time. In the very northwest, there is the Friedrichshain, a large open park of the same name as the locality.
So I had a few sips of my coffee and I hope that you have some orientation now. First on my list for today is the East Side Gallery, a part of the former wall that is used as a huge art gallery. Then I want to check out Simon-Dach-Straße, a very lively neighborhood with a lot of bars. And last but not least, the Karl-Marx-Allee or Frankfurter Allee that has some special architecture from the 1950s. But first let me just say something about the station in the background, because the Ostbahnhof, it used to be the main station of East Berlin until the reunion, and it was actually the Hauptbahnhof, so it had the name Hauptbahnhof in the east until I think 1998, before they changed it back to Ostbahnhof. If you want to find out more about it, I also recommend you my video from Moabit. This is where I explain the station situation here in Berlin. But now let's check out the East Side Gallery.
The East Side Gallery is a mix of history and art. It is the longest preserved part of the former Berlin Wall, with a length of approximately 2 kilometers. Soon after the fall of the Berlin Wall, artists gathered up at this spot and began to paint segments. Each artist contributed a painting that roughly deals with the topics peace, humanity, and sustainability. As both weather and graffitis harm the artworks, they get refreshed every few years. Today, the East Side Gallery is one of the most popular tourist attractions of Berlin. In my opinion, the East Side Gallery is not only a modern cultural heritage site, but also an anchor in a neighborhood that has changed drastically, comparable to areas like Potsdamer Platz or Berlin Central. Just a couple of years ago, the South of Friedrichshain was pretty much a wasteland, with plenty of abandoned railway tracks and a few old commercial operations. Here you can see a few photos that I took back in 2004. If you compare it to 2022, you almost cannot believe that this is the same place. Tall office buildings and a new mall shape the area, as well as a large sports and event arena. You can't deny that free spaces and the underground culture that have given Berlin a very attractive reputation over the last decades have vanished dramatically, and the South of Friedrichshain is one of the best examples of this shift.
I have arrived at the southern end of Simon-Dach-Straße Second attraction on my list for today, as I said in the beginning, a street full of cafes, restaurants, bars. The tour has been intense so far for me personally, because I think the area around Warschauer Straße and Wegelände has changed a lot. And let's walk on the Simon-Dach-Straße now.
Warschauer Straße is the road next to the mall and the high tower that you just saw. Wegelände refers to a former railway depot that has been used as a site for concerts and culture over the last decades, and that probably symbolizes Friedrichshain's history of the last 30 years or so pretty well. Here are just a few impressions. Simon-Dach-Straße is another symbol, a small road with old houses that contain many restaurants and bars. You can find almost every cuisine of the world here, and the prices are still moderate, regarding the high quality of food that you usually get served. I had a delicious Vietnamese dish. Nearby you will find Boxhagener Platz, or Boxy as people used to say. It is a small square that is usually packed with young people that enjoy a Späti-Bier and families on sunny days. It is also part of the truth, however, that this area has got high rents nowadays.
I found a bank for a little break here in Frankfurter Allee. Behind me you can see one of those typical buildings, and in my opinion the style is really nice, but that's of course a matter of taste. What is really interesting about these buildings is that they were built in the 1950s and the style derives from the Soviet Union, and they were very progressive, very modern for that time. But while building these, there were some political implications, and I will try to explain this to you, and I will also try to show some footage of these houses for you.
We are looking on a strip of 2 kilometers, of which the majority is named Karl-Marx-Allee, while a shorter part in the very east is named Frankfurter Allee. The streets are extremely wide, with a green strip in the middle and the underground life U5 underneath. Most of the buildings on both sides of the street were built in the 1950s, following the idea that every worker should live in a bright and modern flat that offered, for example, central heating, which was pretty much unknown to most Berlin citizens to this point. The architecture, with small towers and plenty of tiles, was heavily inspired by architecture from the Soviet Union. The problem was that the workers who had to build these houses in the 1950s had to work very hard. At a certain point they started to protest against the conditions, an uprising that sparked a flame in the whole country in 1953. The uprising was soon crushed, however, and the GDR would more and more become a totalitarian state over the next 36 years. The buildings are still popular these days anyway. Size and quality are decent, and the view from the upper floors is amazing. Additionally, this area is relatively close to the center and offers very good possibilities of public transport. The neighborhood in the second row is less spectacular though. Most of these houses were built in the different times, where priorities in social housing had shifted towards a more efficient way of building. You can also find a few older gams as well. What is also interesting is that in the area closer to Ostbahnhof, you still find some traces of the wasteland that I described earlier. Next to the famous Berghain, you still have some abandoned buildings and empty spaces. The exciting question is, for how long will it remain?
Is there a better place to finish this video rather than here in front of the famous Berghain, the nightclub? I don't know, but it's definitely worth mentioning it in this video about Friedrichshain and about what makes this locality so special. And also, if I turn around, you can see part of what we have discovered before, which I would call the future Friedrichshain. So I hope you enjoyed this tour, and I hope to see you soon again. Take care. Cheers.